These guys are sports lunatics. This is the Sports Lunatics Show.
Welcome to another edition of the Sports Lunatics. Who are the Sports Lunatics? Well, we're just two regular guys who love sports history. Hi, I'm Sean Levine in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And I'm Howie Mooney here in Barrie, Ontario.
And don't forget, you can follow us at thesportslunatics.com. We're going to have more information about Howie's new book, but we'll get right into it. This week's topic, it is based on what we've seen in the National Hockey League and a lot of milestones that have been happening on the goal scoring front. Austin Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs is on an amazing tear to start this season already, back-to-back hat tricks, but scored his 300th career goal in 482 games, which is one of the best rates in National Hockey League history. So I thought we'd talk about the top 10 goal scorers that we have seen. Now, there may be goal scorers from the 40s, the 50s that we have never seen play that maybe deserve to be on this list. If you have your own personal list at home, you may be angry with us because we may forget, or not even forget, but just not put some of your favorite players on that list. So we're going to go from 10 to 1, which we do. Howie and I have no idea who's on each other's lists. That's how we like to do it here on the Sports Lunatics. So Howie, how about I give you the floor? Your 10th top goal scorer of all time in terms of guys that you thought were great goal scorers in the National Hockey League.
One of the things, as a guy who played goal for 45 plus years, as you know, Shawnee, one of the things I always look at is release and how the puck comes off a guy's stick. Now, you saw me play for my work team against NHL alumni guys back in 2013. And this is a guy that I played against in 2 of those games. I hate him because he scored on me. And he scored on me in a violent fashion in which the puck went past me really fast. Rick Vive. Back in the day, there used to be a show on Global TV called Sportsline with your friend Jim Taddy and a guy that I worked with, Mark Hebscher. And they would say that when Vive would come down the wing, he would let go a howitzer. And my God, it is. It went by my ear one time into the top corner of the net. I was coming. I knew he was parked in Ovechkin's office there. I knew the play was going to go to him. As soon as the puck went over, I got over as fast as I could. The puck went by my left ear. I moved too quickly. If I had moved a little bit slower, it would have hit me in the face and I would have stopped it. But no, it went in the net. The following year, he's coming down the wing, and I'd been playing pretty well in that one. The game that you saw me play, I played terribly, but the next year I played pretty well. And he's coming down the wing on my left, so on the right side. I come out to challenge. I figure I've got the angle covered. He puts it past me on my stick side, my right side. I hear a clang, then I hear the crowd cheer. And then not long after that, the buzzer went, the period was over. And I thought, you crumb, you scored on me again, you crumb. The next night, I'm driving home from work. And he's on an interview on sports radio in Toronto, talking about how much he enjoys playing in those alumni games and scoring on these goalies. And I'm thinking, you crumb, you're talking about me. Rick
Well,
Vive.
I have to say, after seeing your performance against Rick Vive, you had no chance. They were just playing with you, I think, in the game that I saw.
Yeah, I was very disappointed.
But Rick Vive, really underrated in the goal scoring any list because of the teams he played on. The Leaf teams of that era in the 80s were awful. And he was really the only bright light. There was a couple of guys on that team that were very good, but overall, they did not have a lot of playoff success. But Rick Vive, the first Leaf to score 50 goals.
Yeah.
Which considering, all the players before him, that was an amazing accomplishment. And that was a bright spot for those Leafs teams. So that's a great way to start the list, Howie. I really like that. Rick Five, number 10.
Who's your number 10?
My number 10 is Jaromir Jagr.
Ah,
I loved watching him play. And it was actually what I really loved to watch. 2005, 2006, he had gone to the KHL for 3 years. And he came back and he was in his like mid 30s. Because I think now he's 85 and still playing over in the Czech Republic or wherever he's playing now. But that year he scored 54 goals. I know the league had changed the rules and implemented, to create more offense. Well, he took advantage of that. But it was such a treat to watch him play night in, night out, and covering his season, because he literally, when he left to go to the KHL, his production was dropping off. He struggled in Washington, had a year with the Rangers, and then went to the KHL. And then comes back and has a 54-goal season and a 30-goal season. When he started his career, 11 of his 12 years, he had 30-plus. He had 62 in 95, 96, which was considered sort of the dead puck era. That was sort of the beginning of that sort of time frame where guys weren't supposed to score, and he was scoring at will. Just his frame, just the way he skated. At times it didn't look like he gave a lot of effort, but he was, and could fend off defenders like crazy. I just loved watching him play, and it might have helped that he had one of the greatest mullets in hockey history. But Jaromir Jagr, number 10 on my list.
that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that choice. I don't have him on my list, but I like the choice of Jaromir Jagr. I think anybody who can play professional hockey into their 50s, I think he deserves kudos. And I mean, the fact that he owns his team, he owns his team and can still play at he's not just a token player out there. He's a player. He's a star. And as long as he's playing, I guess people will come out and watch him play too.
Well, but it also tells you about his determination and work ethic.
Yeah.
I think that was in Washington. A lot of people said he just took the money and really wasn't giving it his all. Goes away to the KHL, comes back, and yes, his production declined after he left New York, but his dedication to the game never did, and I think he deserves to be on that list. Who's your number 9?
Well, my number 9 is the aforementioned Austin Matthews. I think that Austin Matthews, excuse me, Austin Matthews, like I said, has one of the best releases I've ever seen on a guy. The puck comes off his stick so fast and so deceptively that and he's such a prolific goal scorer. I'm not a Leaf fan at all. In fact, I'm kind of a Leaf basher. But Austin Matthews is my number 9 goal scorer, my number 9 sniper.
Well, it's funny that you go with Austin Matthews at number 9. I'm going with Connor McDavid at number 9. And I think they're going to be linked, just like Crosby and Ovechkin have been linked for so many years. I think it's going to be the McDavid-Matthews era that we speak about, 15, 20 years down the road. Connor McDavid, 7 straight seasons with 30-plus goals, 64 goals last season, and he uses his speed. One of the fastest players we've ever seen in the game in terms of just how he can literally go end to end and skate through 5 guys and then beat the goaltender. It's remarkable to watch. It's a treat to watch. We have been so lucky that we've had to be Matthews and McDavid to watch, just like we had Crosby and Ovechkin to watch for so many years. And before that, a guy by the name of Gretzky, who I have a feeling might be on this list as well. But Connor McDavid, to me, had a bit of injury issues because, he had 300 goals in 563 games. I think, production-wise, I think he'd be far ahead of Austin Matthews because he lost pretty much a season due to injury. So, great talent. Connor McDavid, number 9.
Incredible talent. Just the way that his ability to skate, his ability to, like, on his edges, he's spectacular. And yeah, that's a great choice.
Number 8.
A guy you worked with, Shawnee, a guy that Phil Esposito. He's my number 8. He was just a truck in front of the net forever and ever and ever. People talk about Tim Kerr that way. I think about Phil Esposito that way. Scored 76 goals in 70, was it 71, 72? I'm going back to 70, 71, back to when I was in primary school. And Phil Esposito was one of those guys. 1972, he was the catalyst on that Team Canada. He was the guy that gave the stirring speech that nobody on his team saw, but we all, watching the televisions, we all saw Phil Esposito's speech. I think of him. I'm a Montreal fan when I was growing up. Hated the Boston Bruins, but Phil Esposito was a guy. He'd take 4-minute shifts, but who cares? He scored goals like it was easy. Some people called him a garbage man because he'd pick up the rebounds and score. But I mean, to me, Phil Esposito was one of the greatest goal scorers in my lifetime.
Unfortunately, I never got to see Phil Esposito much. And when I did, it was sort of in his later years where he wasn't as prolific. Great choice. I didn't put Phil on my list. Because I have other guys that I've seen that I think were better goal scorers from that standpoint, but perfect choice. I would never take that away or slam that selection whatsoever. There's only a handful of guys who have scored over 700 goals. Phenomenal talent. What can you say about the man? Just a legendary career. My number 8 is a guy that before Alexander Ovechkin may have been one of the most exciting, electrifying players I've ever watched skate, and that's Pavel Bure. Pavel Bure is forgotten just how great a player he was. Now, some of the teams he played on, that's why he may have gotten lost on a lot of people's lists, but he scored 60 goals twice, 59 and 58. He is 6th all-time in goals per game, 437 goals in 702 games. He was a magician with the puck, like McDavid, blazing speed, and had the skill. It's such incredible skill that I think if you have a chance, if you don't know who Pavel Bure is, go on YouTube, check him out. The highlights are electric.
An amazing, amazing skater and an amazing, amazing hockey player as well. You're right. That's a great choice.
Number 7.
I'm going with Mario Lemieux, Mario Lemieux, a guy with just incredible talent, incredible hockey player. But the thing that I think that bothered a lot of people was the fact that he played the game because he played the game well. I don't know how much he loved playing the game, but he played the game really, really well. I remember going to see him play in Ottawa when in Ottawa's first year, the Senators' first year. My brother and I had season tickets. And the first 2 periods, Lemieux didn't do much at all. The third period, I think he got 2 goals and 2 assists and was the game's first star. He turned it on when he wanted to turn it on. He was a kind of an enigmatic superstar in some ways. But, I mean, Mario Lemieux, you can't deny the talent that he had. You can't deny the ability that he had. And he is my number 7.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with Mario. And it's funny, you talk about the passion, and I always think now it's like, well, he saved a franchise. He loves the game. I also know he might like the money that he's making off the franchise. One of the greatest investments in hockey history. But as a player, I think when he went through all his health problems, that's the other thing that people tend to forget. If he didn't love the game with some of the health issues he dealt with, I don't know if he'd come back.
You're right. And that's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like I get what you said, because on the ice there are nights, and people always said it's like he's just floating out there. He's just floating around, skating around, and then all of a sudden he's got this natural talent where he can score from anywhere. Because he can. But yeah, I understand where you're saying about that. And it's funny because my number 7 is Austin Matthews. And Austin Matthews, I think, has those traits as well at times of Mario. Number one, the size. Number two, he seems like he can score from anywhere. Number three, if you talk to Leaf fans, especially in the playoffs, where is he sometimes? But in terms of, like I said, what he's doing right now, he looks like he's a man on a mission with his start to the season. And he scored 300 goals in 482 games. He's fifth all time in goals per game already in his career, which is remarkable. And there's some names on this list that he's just behind. So he's in great company there. If he stays healthy, just like Connor McDavid, I'll be curious where their final numbers are going to tally, because we could be looking at 2 700 goal scorers here, and maybe they can rival what Ovechkin and Gretzky have done in their careers as well.
As somebody who lives in the Greater Toronto area, I can attest to everything that you just said, especially with the way the fans in this area are. They are very impatient. They are very demanding in terms of their teams, especially if they feel that the teams are decent. And the Leaf teams that we've seen over the last few years have been decent teams, sometimes even very good teams. The year that there was the COVID year, the Canadian division, they ran away with the Canadian division and then lost in the first round to Montreal. And I mean, I've told you this story many times, millions of times probably. When Montreal beat Toronto, the next day I took 2 steps into work and got inside the door, and somebody yelled, "F you, Mooney," because I'm a Montreal fan. I'm a tiny red speck in a deep blue sea here in the Greater Toronto area. But yeah, I mean, Austin Matthews, and it just signed the big contract, so there's no fear of him leaving Toronto. He is a massive star here, and always will be, I think.
Number 6 on your list.
Number 6 on my list, the Golden Jet, Bobby Hull. Bobby Hull, the first guy to really use that curved stick blade. Johnny Bauer used to talk about Bobby Hull, and he'd say he'd come down that wing and he'd take a slap shot past my head, and you'd hear it off the glass all the way around. And he'd do that to make a point, to say that, like, be careful, beware, I could do this to you. And then he'd shoot one low far side and beat the goalie that way, because the guy would be like doing this, because I mean, goalies didn't wear masks back then, and he's shooting past their heads. A guy who had an immense talent. He was one of the biggest stars of the game when I was a kid. Everything. Bobby Hull was on everything. He was on cereal boxes. He was on skates. His signature was on every skate. His equipment, his Bobby Hull equipment, was everywhere. It just, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing Bobby Hull. He wrote a book, Hockey Is My Game, and on the front cover, he's just been hip checked and he's face down but his body's up in the air on the ice. Bobby Hull was massive, and in terms of goal scoring, just a tremendous goal scorer as well. And he did it with a panache, and he did it with a flair that very few people up to that point, and even after that point, have exhibited. He's just a tremendous hockey player, tremendous goal scorer. Say what you will about him as a person, I don't care. When I was a kid, Bobby Hull was bigger than life, and he's my number 6.
Great choice. Again, never really got to see Bobby Hull at his best, because at the time in his final season, he played with the Whalers. And of course, I didn't really see him in the WHA at all. So I never really got to see Bobby Hull at his best. But it's funny the way you characterize that in terms of, one of the first great goal scorers you ever saw. Guy Lafleur was that for me, and that's my number 6. 6 straight seasons with 50+ goals. Had one of the great, 5-6 year spans that you're ever going to see in the National Hockey League in terms of his goal scoring prowess on some great teams, and that has helped. I'm sure that has helped. But the most electrifying player I had ever seen at that time, and and I'll talk about a couple of other people ahead of him that brought me out of my seats. But Lafleur, as soon as he had the puck on his stick, you knew something special was going to happen. And of course, when I think Guy Lafleur, I always think of that 79 playoff shot that propelled the Canadiens into overtime, Game 7 against the Bruins. And that's just a moment in my life that I will never forget. And he made it happen. And Guy Lafleur to me is, it's forgotten again because of time has passed, but just how special a player he was.
I've got Guy Lafleur further up on my list, but that he had that span of time where he was the greatest hockey player on earth. He was, without a doubt, the tremendous. He started out, I think they had him as a center to start, and he wore that giant Lang helmet. After his first season, he ditched the Lang helmet. They moved him over to the wing, and he just took off. He started to take off at that point. And I'll talk more about Guy Lafleur when I get to him in my list.
Who's number 5 on yours?
Well, I talked about Bobby Hull a second ago. My number 5 is Bobby Hull's son, Brett Hull. How can you have a list like this without having Brett Hull on your list? Brett Hull, one of the first guys to establish an area on the ice that was his office, and along with Adam Oates, who was one of the greatest facilitators in hockey history, Hull and Oates, sorry.
I can't go for that. No,
you make my dreams come true. Brett Hull, just one timer that was just one of the greatest shots off that one timer in the history of the NHL, and he is my number 5.
Great minds think alike, because Brett Hull is also number 5 on my list. 9th in the all-time list in goals per game. 5th in the all-time list was 741 goals, and was the 4th fastest to reach 500 goals in 693 games during his career. Just like you said, Howie, Hull and Oates, one of the greatest duos in hockey history. And really, watching the game and could find that hole, could find that space to get his shot off, and was lethal with it. Not the most athletic, to say the least, but he just had a great mind to find that open space. And Brett Hull is worthy of number 5 on both of our lists.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought up that point, though, Sean, about him being able to find space, because that's one of the great missing talents in a lot of hockey games and players, is that their ability to kind of get lost on the ice into a spot where nobody sees them and nobody can find them. And he was able to do that very, very well.
Well, number said. 4. Who's number 4 on your list?
Number 4 on my list is Alex Ovechkin. He's got that knack. He's got that ability. Everybody knows where he's going to be and what he's going to do, but he still is able to score anyway. I was talking to a friend of mine who took his girlfriend to a game, and he pointed to Alex Ovechkin and said, "Watch that guy. He's going to set up camp at the top of the circle. The puck's going to come to him and he's going to score." And she says, "Well, if they all know he's going to do that, why can't they stop him?" They can't. They just can't. He is just that formidable. He's just that great a goal scorer. And say what you will about him as a person or politically or whatever, I don't care. He is my 4th choice, my 4th greatest goal scorer of all time.
I will save my Ovechkin because he's higher on my list. But great points by you on that. One of the most dynamic players we have ever seen shoot a puck. And I loved what you said. Everybody knows the puck's going to him, yet he always finds a way to score. And he's got a little Brett Hull in him in terms of finding that spot and perfecting it. It's crazy how good he is, especially on the power play. You put him on the point, everybody knows it's going to him, and he always finds a way.
Absolutely.
I may shock a few people, and I know I'm going to get a few darts thrown my way. I'm putting Wayne Gretzky at number 4.
Whoa.
I know.
Let me find my darts. Let me find my darts.
Could you make them lawn darts? I think they might hurt less. But Wayne Gretzky, of course, the all-time leader currently at 894. His office was behind the net. He was the fastest man to score 500 in 575 games. Had the greatest vision on the ice, could think 5 steps ahead of the next guy. I get it. I understand it. But he also had one of the great teams in history behind him to help. And the rules at that time and the goaltending, and you can speak to this. I know there were great goaltenders in the 80s, but there was a whole lot of net that you can find to score. And I just feel, that you put Wayne Gretzky in today's era, and I know people hate that, but he would not have as much success, I don't believe, uh, that he did in the 80s. I could be wrong on this. I give you the floor.
Well, first of all, where are my darts? Give me my darts. I just wrote a piece on Wayne Gretzky yesterday, and I sent it off to a friend of mine who knows the family and knows his family, knows Wayne's family and all that stuff. So I sent it off to him to take a look at it and kind of check it out for me and add anything that he feels needed to be added. But it's basically about Gretzky when he was 18 years old, and you had him at 17 playing in the WHA, scoring 46 goals in that first 17 years old, and he scored 46 goals in a season. Every level he moved up, he was told that it was going to be tougher and tougher and tougher. When he went to when the Oilers and Gretzky moved into the NHL, he said he didn't name the person, but he said, it took me 10 years to run Bobby Orr, and I'm going to run Wayne Gretzky too. One guy ran Wayne Gretzky, and then he was run out of the league. Got caught in the trolley tracks crossing the blue line. But what Don Cherry said about Wayne Gretzky, he's a rope. You can't hit a rope. It's hard to hit a rope. He had the ability to move. He had the ability to change direction very, very quickly. Who was it? Rich Preston and another guy that played for the Houston Aeros and then joined the Winnipeg Jets afterwards. But they both said, we played against Wayne Gretzky, and he's a really, really hard guy to hit. When he was 18, it took him 3 games to score his first goal. And he was frustrated up to that point. And that scoring that goal, he said it took pressure off him. And I find that hard to fathom, because a guy like Wayne Gretzky, he had never looked like he was playing with pressure. He always looked like he was playing just an easy game, and he made the game look easy. He was the guy who thought the game more than played the game. His father always told him, don't go to where the puck has been, go to where the puck's going to go. And he was one of the guys who thought the game. He had a brain for the game that was incredible. And I've got him as my number 1. Just a spoiler alert. But that's why when you talk about Wayne Gretzky that way, you think that the game was easier back then. How come nobody else could do it then? Nobody else could do what Wayne Gretzky could do. Wayne Gretzky was the greatest goal scorer in my lifetime, and I'll talk more about him as we get there.
Yes, we have a difference of opinion. Okay, we got to look through this. Who's number 3 on your list?
My number 3 is Guy Lafleur, and I've got Guy at number 3. As you talked about that goal against Boston in 1979, but to me, having seen him play live in 81 against the Edmonton Oilers in a game that ended 3-3, it was just he was just experiencing the Forum when he would get that head of steam going and coming down the right wing, and you could feel the buzz in the air. You could feel the anticipation. Toe Blake said that there were 3 players in the Bleu Blanc Rouge that could make people stand up: Howie Morenz, Rocket Richard, and Guy Lafleur. And that's pretty good company to be in. Guy Lafleur. Can I tell a little story from my book?
Absolutely.
When Guy Lafleur passed away, one of the guys that I spoke to was Brian Patafi, and Pataf was a trainer at all levels of hockey. He was 44 years, I think, in hockey. Worked in junior hockey. He worked in the minors. He worked in Europe. He worked in the NHL. In the 80s, he was working with the Habs, and he's walking under the stands. He's got his golf shirt on with the CH on it, And that night, there's going to be a Robert Plant concert in the Forum. And he's walking, and Phil Collins comes up to him, and he's got one of those triangular pennants that they used to have, and he says, "Can you get Mr. Lafleur to sign this for me?" And Pataff looks at him and says, "You're Phil Collins," and he says, "Yeah. Can you get Mr. Lafleur to sign this for me?" So he says, "Yeah, I can do that. Give me a minute." And so he goes back into the dressing room, and Lafleur is sitting in there, and he says, "Hey, Flower, Phil Collins wants your autograph." And Lafleur looks at him and says, "Oh, Pataff," he says, "Stop." And he says, "No, seriously, he's out there. He wants your autograph." And he says, "Show me." And the way that Brian told me the story, he says, "Yeah, Lafleur put on his warm up shorts for the first time, and walked out. We walked out, and we ran into Phil Collins, and Collins took us back into his dressing room, and on it there was a table full of food, and he says, 'Help yourselves, boys.'" And so he says, "I'm sitting there eating the sandwiches, watching these two guys talk to each other like they just met their idol, he says, 'Have I died and gone to heaven?'" So that's my little Guy Lafleur story.
That's remarkable. That is a remarkable story.
I love that story.
That is a wonderful story.
That's in my book, and that actually finishes off the book, that story.
Wow. More Crazy Days and Wild Nights, and you can find it on Amazon right now. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Howie, my number 3, and I toyed with what order do I put my top 3 in. I'm going to change it, actually, because I am now going to put Mario Lemieux at number 3. And I know he was number 7, I believe, on your initial list.
Yes.
I just go to the fact that Mario Lemieux, to me, if he had been healthy, and I know you hate the what-if game, I think we're talking about Alexander Ovechkin chasing Mario Lemieux and not Wayne Gretzky. I think 11th all-time, 690 goals. He essentially lost 3 seasons off his career. He holds the record of scoring 5 goals 5 different ways in a game. He's second all-time in goals per game, behind number 2 on my list. But Mario Lemieux, to me, is one of the greatest goal scorers. And as you said before, there are times it looked like he could do it in his sleep. And I am putting him at number 3 on my list. I love watching Mario Lemieux. I think I compared him to, or Austin Matthews to him, in terms of he was the biggest guy in the sport at that time, the biggest, the quickest, in terms of not speed per se, but when he needed to ratchet up, he could, and he could score from anywhere. That's what I loved about Mario Lemieux.
The thing I loved seeing him do was just exhibit his skill. He was a tremendously skilled hockey player, and I just wish I could have seen that more often. I mean, he could do so much in tight with the puck, and show it to the defender, pull it back, show it. I remember seeing him play as a rookie in Montreal. He was one-on-one with Larry Robinson. He put the puck in Robinson's feet, pulled it back, put it through, skated around him, and Robinson was left confounded. And it was just incredible to see that. And that, to me, I loved the skill that he had. I wish I could have seen it more often.
All I'm going to say is anybody that can embarrass Ray Bourque and go through, that tells me everything I need to know. 2 of the most signature highlights of my life involve Mario Lemieux against the North Stars in the Cup final and against the Boston Bruins, in the conference finals. They are etched in my mind forever. And that's why I love Mario Lemieux. And the fact that he came back from the type of health issues he had to still be elite and score at a high level, you can't deny how his greatness. You just can't.
No, of course not. And I mean, he's Mario Le Magnifique, and he always will be.
Who's number 2 on your list?
Well, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think who are our top, at least my top two. Mike Bossy is my number two. I saw him play in Montreal one night, and I mean, I think Doug Sotart was in net for Montreal at the time, and I mean, the poor guy. Bossy scored. I think he had a hat trick that night, and he may have had 5 points. But in a 6-5 Montreal win, Bobby Smith scored the winner in overtime. But to see what he could do, and again, I talk about release. Bossy had that tremendous. He had a little hitch. He'd pretend that he was going to shoot. He'd stop, then he'd shoot. He'd force the goalie to move, and then he'd score. He was the first guy to score 50 goals 9 straight years. What can I say about him? I think he was one of the most pure goal scorers, if not of his generation, then maybe of all time. Just a magnificent hockey player, and he was the missing piece for that Islanders team that went on to win 4 Stanley Cups in a row.
Boss is number 2 on my list as well, Howie. I always think of if he had another 5 to 7 years. I honestly, he's up there with Gretzky. He and Ovechkin's chasing both of them.
Yeah,
I think that's how great he was, and Lemieux. Like Lemieux and Bossy, to me, it just feels like we got robbed.
Well, that's the getting robbed of your generation. My generation was Bobby Orr. Losing him after just 9 years, and a couple of those years, few of those years were where he couldn't even skate. Like he couldn't play for 72 Team Canada because his knee. There's an Aislinn cartoon where he's sitting there with a cast on his leg and the TV's blaring, and he's just sitting there watching the game, and that Bobby Orr was my guy. That was, we lost him too early. But Mike Bossy, absolutely another guy whose career ended way too early.
I think we just created a new show just as we spoke. No, I'm serious. I think that would be great if we went through sports careers.
Yeah.
And just to see the type of athletes we lost, because we would have, we really would. We'd have a Hall of Fame list.
Oh, absolutely. They're just coming into my head as we talk.
Wow, there's so many. There's so many, but those are 3 prime examples that, how great could they have been? And there's still, that's the funny thing. There's still, the top 20 of all time, despite everything. And in a couple of cases, top 10 all time. So, and that's what I mean. I don't know where Bossy would list in the all-time list as a player, even if he had kept going. Like scoring 60 goals in 5 of his 10 seasons, Howie, is remarkable.
Yeah. 1977 draft, the Islanders, I say that the Islanders had one name on their draft list, but they were picking 15th, and they wanted Mike Bossy, but they never thought he would fall to them. He fell all the way down to 15. That to me is just, it's incredible. It's ridiculous.
Every general manager should be fired that passed on Mike Bossy.
The Leafs had 2 chances at him. They drafted twice in the top 12, and they took John Anderson, who was not a bad hockey player, but Trevor Johansson, the defenseman. And they left Mike Bossy out on the table.
That's another show. The worst draft picks in Maple Leafs history, because there's so many. There's
John Anderson. John Anderson had a great burger.
No, John Anderson was actually a solid player.
He was a good hockey player,
and he was a very good coach too. Yeah. So no, I'm not just. But it's just the what ifs again. Like, what if they had that chance? But
the Rangers picked
15 other, or 14 other, 13 other teams passed on Mike Bossy. So
I think the Rangers had 2 picks too, and they took Lucien Deblois and Ron Duguay, which not bad.
Hey,
not Mike
Bossy. World, Ron Duguay was perfect for New York. Who's number 1 on your list?
Oh, can I tell a Ron Duguay story from the book too?
Yes, you can. I feel like it's story time with Howie Moon.
Ron Duguay liked to go to Studio 54. His coach, Herb Brooks, did not like the fact that he went to Studio 54, and it grated on him. But there was one night where he scored a goal and he felt pretty good about himself. And he just said he just wanted to go and relax. And so he went to Studio 54 and he's standing there. And there's this woman, she's going like this to him. It was Liza Minnelli. Liza's pointing at him and saying, "Come here." And so she introduces him to her husband. And then she says, "I'm a big Rangers fan. I have somebody that I want you to meet." It was Cher.
Oh my God.
So Cher comes over and says to Ron Duguay, "Do you dance, kid?" And he said, "Yeah." And so she pulls him over to the dance floor and there's a slow song. And he says, we're dancing all this fun stuff. And there's a slow song comes on and there's a picture. And it's a famous picture. If you Google Ron Duguay Cher, there's a picture and she's like on him and she's on his shoulder, and she's like, and she looks very, very happy. And he's looking around like, the hell's going on here? I'm just this Canadian kid from Sudbury, and I used to watch Sonny and Cher on TV, and now I got Cher hanging on my shoulder here. So Liza says to them, "We're gonna have a party afterwards. Come over to my place." So Cher and Ron Duguay jump into a cab. They go over to Liza's place, and Liza, like, she's there. They're not there about a half an hour later. So Cher's going like, "Okay, let's go. We're going somewhere else." So she takes him to this townhouse, a beautiful townhouse in New York. And she says, "Listen, I'm just going to tell you right now, I don't do anything on the first date, okay?" And he says, "I'm just happy to be here." So they go up the stairs and he's looking on the walls and there's all these gold records, but they're not Cher records. They're Kiss records. They're at Gene Simmons' house.
Oh my God.
And so they're on the bed. And she said again, "Look, I'm just telling you again, nothing's going to happen." He says, "I don't care. I'm just happy to be here." And,
in that voice too.
That's how the story ends. That's how the story ends. But that's my little Ron Duguay story.
I've said this 1,000 times over the years in sports media. I wish they would do a documentary on that period of New York Rangers.
Oh God, yeah.
Because Phil Esposito talks about, having to hang around or essentially babysit these guys because he was married, he had kids,
yeah,
he was the elder statesman of the team, and then you had all these young guys who were just having the time of their life.
Yeah.
And like, it would be remarkable just to hear, I know Ron Duguay's told some stories and that one you just said was incredible.
And that's from the book too.
And I've had him, we've had him on various shows during my career. And he alludes to, just what a wild time it was to be a hockey star in the biggest market in North America. Like it was that time, it was disco, it was celebrity, that was the real start of celebrity and paparazzi and his, these guys, they were all over the place. Like it was a wild scene. Oh, and they were pretty good too. Like they were a good hockey team.
And I love those Ranger jerseys.
It would be wild if somebody would do a great documentary on that. I think that would be a perfect 30 for 30.
Oh, absolutely. I love those Ranger jerseys too, with the stripe down the arm and the shield on the chest.
Oh, I think it'd be great. No, that's a great. That's awesome. That I love how we just branch off into stuff like that. It's wild. So we're at number one.
Yes,
I know everybody's waited with bated breath. I'm already getting lawn darts thrown at me because I did not have Wayne Gretzky as number one. But I give you the floor. Who is your number one greatest goal scorer that you've seen?
Number 99, Wayne Gretzky. No, Wayne Gretzky is my number one. I mean, he's got 894 goals. He's the leading goal scorer in NHL history as we record this show. I mean, how could he not be number one? That's how I feel.
Well, I'm going to make the counterpoint. I'm going to go with Alexander Ovechkin as my number one.
Yeah, I know you are.
And I've said this, I alluded to it earlier. I just think that Ovechkin has played in an era where the goaltending And you may disagree right now because I think the goaltending is a little weaker than it has been. But for the majority of his career, I would say the goaltending standards are so much better in this era. The goaltending is so much better in this era than Gretzky ever had to deal with, ever. And
We can debate
Ovechkin,
goaltending, and we will at some point, I'm sure.
well, and you are the expert in this field, and I understand, and I know this will likely upset you with this argument that I am posing here, but I just feel one-on-one, Ovechkin, Wayne dominated, I understand. Ovechkin, to me, you take away the time that he's lost because of the work stoppages. We're talking right now him neck and neck with Gretzky for the all-time goal
Oh,
scoring.
I'm aware of that. But the thing is, Gretzky was a complete player. I mean, how can you have 13 years in a row?
No. We're
13
talking
years.
about goal scorers
I
specifically.
know that, but he was a complete player. And I know we're talking about goal scorers, but Gretzky could score goals. He scored 92 goals in a season. 92.
Ovi didn't have as many great teams as what Wayne Gretzky had, especially in that Oilers dynasty reign.
When Wayne Gretzky started with the Edmonton Oilers, they were an expansion team. They were
They were a very good expansion team.
They were not a very good expansion team. They finished 16th out of 21 teams in that first year.
They still made the playoffs.
Yeah, I know, but that's not Wayne Gretzky's fault. That's the fault of the league. And there were 21 teams at that time. There were 16 teams making the playoffs. Yes, but there are 32 teams now, and there are 16 teams making the playoffs. Is that fair? It's that I don't know.
It was Ovi and a bunch of whoever. They were terrible when he came into the league.
Yeah, but okay, who was the coach?
I didn't know there was math involved.
Was it Gabby or was it Barry Trotz?
No. Trotz was not there then.
Okay,
no,
so it was Gabby.
Later.
It was Gabby was the coach. He was the guy that put them all together. He was the guy that got them all together and got them on the same page, and it created a champion out of them. And they never won a Stanley Cup before that. They never won a Stanley Cup after that, but they won a Stanley Cup with him, and that's who I credit. I credit the coach.
And okay, wait a second. You're crediting the coach for Alexander Ovechkin's success?
No. Alexander Ovechkin. I have him on my list. He's number 4 on my list.
Right.
But
which is way too low.
Hey, a lawn dart just hit me in the eye.
Exactly. So it's funny that you have Ovi at number 4 on your list, and I have Gretzky on number 4 on mine.
Yeah, that is interesting, isn't it? That is interesting.
I just think Alexander Ovechkin, when he came into the league, and again, we just talked about it with Lafleur. Mm-hmm. He brought you out of your seat. He could score from anywhere. He had that Brett Hull sense that he can find that hole.
Yeah.
And he had that wicked shot on the power play. He was an assassin.
Yeah.
I should say still is.
Yeah.
His consistency. That's the other thing. The consistency. So he's got the consistency of Mike Bossy. He's got the electrifying style of play like Guy Lafleur. And he can put the puck in the net, and he's got the wicked shot like Brett Hull. That's a pretty good combination in my books.
No doubt. It is. It's an outstanding combination. It's wonderful.
I'm not poo-pooing, if I can use the word poo-pooing, on YouTube, your choice of Wayne Gretzky. Don't get me wrong. I totally understand it, but I've never seen a goal scorer like Alexander Ovechkin.
Let me just I'm on hockey reference here. 92 goals in 81-82, 71 goals in 82-83, 87 goals in 83-84, 73 goals in 84-85, 52 goals in 85-86, an off year, 62 goals the next year, then 40, then 54.
Yeah, tell me the goaltenders that he was scoring against. How many Hall of Famers do you think he was scoring against?
He didn't get to choose the era in which he played. He just played in it.
Well, no, I understand. And he was successful at it.
Yeah.
But he had a lot of things going for him. He had crappy goaltenders. He had a dynasty team. and he was in the prime of his career. I get it. You make a valid choice. I'm not saying you chose Gretzky. I'm choosing Ovechkin.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong, and I'm not saying I'm right. It's just who I have seen. That's what this show was about. Why am I getting so worked up here?
I don't know. I don't know.
As Jerry Seinfeld said, what's the deal?
What's the deal with airplane peanuts?
It's a passionate discussion. Look, there's going to be people out there going, number one, you two are nuts. And they may have another guy up higher on their list. Look, if I was an Islander fan, everybody would say Bossy, right?
Some old guy out there is waving his cane at us and saying Maurice Richard should be on number one.
Oh, I thought that was you, actually. Oh no, you got the new hip. I forgot.
No, and I'm getting a newer one too. I'm getting a newer one in January, but
that's exciting.
It is exciting.
I can't wait.
My left hip will have a new baby brother.
Wonderful. And on that note, as it's gone off the rails like it usually does, you have been listening to the Sports Lunatic Show, our top 10 greatest goal scorers we've ever seen in the National Hockey League. Howie, thank you so much. That was an awesome list today. Don't forget, check us out on our YouTube channel, Sports Lunatics. We have tons of videos up there. Also, the sportslunatics.com. You can find out more information how to order Howie's book, more Crazy Days and Wild Nights. There are links there right to the book that you can purchase. And don't forget, he's written too. Crazy Days and Wild Nights was his first book, and you can order both, which would make a great gift under the tree. I'm Sean Levine in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
I'm Howie Mooney in Barrie, Ontario.
And you have been watching and listening to the Sports Lunatics. Have a great sports day.